You buy a house with Bitcoin.
Ooh.
It's something we hear more and more as cryptocurrency kind of goes more mainstream.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are intrigued by the idea.
Yeah.
You know, ditch the whole mortgage system, buy a house outright with Bitcoin.
It definitely has that kind of futuristic appeal, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the exciting thing is it's not just a fantasy anymore.
Right.
There are real estate companies and agents out there, especially in those cities that are really into tech,
Yeah.
like a Miami or Los Angeles,
Uh,
who are actually accepting Bitcoin for property purchases.
wow, so it's actually happening.
Yeah.
I did see that Forbes article about luxury properties being bought with crypto.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes even as like a, part of a mixed payment
Right.
with regular currency.
Exactly. We're
Yeah.
seeing platforms like Propy popping up now,
Oh,
specifically to facilitate these transactions.
interesting.
But that's where things start to get a little complicated.
I was going to say.
There are fees. You got to think about steps involved in converting Bitcoin to dollars.
Right.
And then, of course, there's always taxes.
Oh, yeah, taxes. I always forget about those.
Yeah.
But the IRS must have something to say about buying a house with Bitcoin.
Oh, they definitely do.
Okay.
The IRS considers any Bitcoin transaction,
Uh-huh.
buying, selling, or using it for purchases as a taxable event.
Okay.
And this is where it gets interesting for anyone dreaming of that Bitcoin-powered home purchase.
Yeah.
So let's say you bought Bitcoin at $20,000,
Okay.
and now it's worth $60,000.
All right.
If you use that Bitcoin to buy a house,
Yeah.
you're essentially selling it for $60,000 in the eyes of the IRS.
Oh, wow.
And you'd owe capital gains tax on that $40,000 profit.
Whoa. So it's like you made a $40,000 profit just by using your Bitcoin to buy a house.
Right.
That seems a little counterintuitive.
It can feel that way because you're not directly receiving cash.
Right.
But remember, Bitcoin's value has increased since you bought it. Yeah. Think of it this way. Okay. You're essentially trading an asset that has appreciated in value, which triggers a taxable event. Okay. It's like if you sell stock for a profit,
Right.
even if you're using those proceeds to buy something else.
Because even if I'm not cashing out my Bitcoin,
Exactly.
I could still owe a chunk of change to the IRS just for using it to buy a house.
You got it.
That's something to think about.
It definitely is.
Oh.
And anyone seriously considering this
Yeah.
should do their research on the tax side of things.
Yeah.
The IRS website actually has a lot of good information on cryptocurrency taxes.
Good to know.
Worth checking out.
But even if you have the tax situation figured out,
Right.
there's another big factor.
Oh, yeah.
Bitcoin is notoriously volatile.
For sure.
It feels like the price is constantly going up and down.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that volatility is a major consideration when we're talking about a purchase as big as a house.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about this. In 2023 alone, Bitcoin went from about $47,000 in March to under $20,000 by June.
Wait, so if I had bought a house with Bitcoin in March,
Yeah,
I could have lost half my investment by June.
potentially.
That's terrifying.
The big swing.
Could anyone really handle that level of risk when buying something as important as a home?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I mean, does Bitcoin really provide a stable enough foundation
Right.
for such a massive financial decision?
Yeah.
I think that's something we need to explore further.
Definitely. And while we're talking about real-world numbers,
Mm-hmm.
the average home price in the U.S. is around $430,000,
Okay.
with Bitcoin hovering around, what, $76,260 right now?
About that, yeah.
You need over 5 Bitcoin to buy that average house.
Right.
But what happens if Bitcoin's price suddenly changes before you close the deal?
Exactly.
You might need to scramble to get more Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could end up overpaying in Bitcoin terms if the price skyrockets.
For sure, it adds a whole other layer of uncertainty to what is already a complex process.
Exactly.
We're talking about someone's home here.
Right.
The biggest purchase most people will ever make.
Huge.
To have that tied to such a volatile asset,
Yeah.
it's a little nerve-wracking, to say the least.
It really is.
Yeah.
But beyond the fluctuating price, isn't the entire real estate system kind of built on traditional finance?
Right?
I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about banks, title companies, tax offices.
Yeah.
Are those institutions even equipped to deal with Bitcoin transactions?
That's another great point. I
Yeah.
mean, most of these institutions just aren't set up to handle Bitcoin yet.
So are there legal hurdles on top of the financial ones?
There definitely can be. And it's not just about practicality. It creates risk for both the buyer and the seller.
Right.
The buyer could see their Bitcoin value plummet after buying the house,
Oh, God.
and the seller is left holding a currency that could lose a lot of value very quickly.
So it sounds like using Bitcoin to buy real estate is a bit like navigating uncharted territory. It's clearly not for the faint of heart.
It certainly is a wild ride.
But amidst all these challenges,
Yeah.
there have been some success stories, right? We've heard about those luxury properties in Miami and LA being bought with Bitcoin.
Right.
Those stories must mean something.
Those high-profile examples are definitely intriguing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to note that those tend to be transactions involving, very high-end properties.
Okay.
And buyers who likely have a high tolerance for risk and volatility.
Yeah.
They might using a small portion of their wealth to kind of dabble in Bitcoin real estate.
Right.
Whereas your average home buyer is putting everything on the line.
Right. So maybe those success stories aren't the best indicator of whether Bitcoin is a practical option.
Yeah.
For most people looking to buy a house.
Exactly. For most people, the volatility of Bitcoin, coupled with the complexities of the real estate system, makes it a pretty daunting prospect.
Okay, so we've talked about all the challenges. But let's go back to that initial question.
Okay.
Is buying a house with Bitcoin the future of real estate?
Yeah.
Or is it just a trendy niche for the wealthy?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
Right now, I'd say it's more of a niche trend.
Okay.
But I do think the potential is there for it to become more mainstream.
Interesting.
If the legal and tax hurdles were simplified, and if the volatility of Bitcoin could be addressed somehow, it could become a more viable option for a wider range of buyers and sellers.
It's fascinating to imagine a world where buying a house with Bitcoin was as straightforward as a traditional transaction.
Right.
Without the fear of sudden market crashes.
Right.
What if there were clearer regulations and maybe even some safeguards built in to protect both buyers and sellers from those wild price swings?
That would definitely make it more appealing.
Yeah.
Think about the potential benefits of using blockchain technology in real estate transactions.
Okay.
It could streamline the whole process, make it more transparent. Yeah. And potentially even reduce the need for intermediaries, like banks and title companies.
So instead of dealing with mountains of paperwork and waiting weeks for everything to go through, you could potentially buy a house with Bitcoin in a matter of days.
Yeah.
With all the records securely stored on the blockchain.
That's the idea.
Wow.
Of course, there are a lot of hurdles to overcome before we get there, but the possibility is exciting.
It is, but for now it seems like caution is key.
Absolutely.
Anyone considering this path needs to be fully aware of the risks involved and do their research.
Understanding the tax implications, the volatility of Bitcoin, and the legal complexities is essential. This isn't a decision to be taken lightly.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the allure of bypassing traditional financing to the very real challenges of taxes and volatility. It's clear that buying a house with Bitcoin is a complex issue with a lot of moving parts.
What I find fascinating is that this discussion really highlights the intersection of two major trends. The rise of cryptocurrency and the evolving world of real estate, where this intersection leads us in the future, is still an open question.
And that's what makes it also intriguing.
Yeah.
We might be witnessing a potential shift in how we think about finance and property ownership.
It certainly challenges the status quo.
Yeah.
And whether it becomes a mainstream reality or remains a niche phenomenon, it's a space worth watching closely.
So for our listeners out there,
yeah,
what do you think?
Is Bitcoin the future of real estate?
Yeah.
Or is it just a passing fad?
Would you ever consider buying a house with Bitcoin, knowing all the potential risks and rewards?
We encourage you to do your own research, explore the resources available, and weigh the potential benefits and risks.
Right.
This is a rapidly evolving landscape, and staying informed is crucial.
As we wrap up our deep dive today, I'm left with one final thought-provoking question.
Okay.
Could this be the start of a financial revolution, or is it all hype?
That's for each of us to decide. But one thing's for sure.
What's that?
The world of finance is changing, and Bitcoin is playing a role in that transformation, whether we like it or not.
It really is a fascinating topic.
It is.
And one that definitely leaves us with more questions than answers.
That's what makes these deep dives so exciting, right?
Absolutely. It's all about exploring complexities, considering different perspectives, and ultimately forming our own informed opinion.
I agree.
And for anyone who wants to delve deeper into the world of crypto taxes, remember we mentioned the IRS website as a great resource.
A great resource. Tons of information there.
There's a ton of information there to help you navigate the ins and outs of how the IRS views these transactions.
Definitely worth checking out if you're considering buying or selling anything with Bitcoin, not just real estate.
Well, I think we've successfully navigated the wild world of Bitcoin real estate today.
I think so too.
We've seen that it is possible to buy a house with Bitcoin.
It is.
But it's certainly not without its challenges.
The key takeaway here is that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
The more we understand about the technology, the risks, and the potential, the better equipped we'll be to make informed decisions about our financial futures.
And that's what the deep dive is all about. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Yeah, it's that contrast that makes this whole topic so captivating. It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of new technology, but it's crucial to balance that with a healthy dose of practicality.
Exactly. And for our listeners who are now like, oh my gosh, you got to figure out these taxes.
Right.
Remember we mentioned the IRS website.
Absolutely.
That's a good resource.
It is a goldmine of information.
It is.
Especially if you're even thinking about, just dabbling in crypto, not even just for real estate.
Yeah.
They lay out exactly how the IRS views these transactions.
Right.
Which can be pretty different from how we traditionally think about buying and selling.
Yeah, so I think we've successfully navigated the thrilling and slightly terrifying world of Bitcoin real estate today.
Yeah.
We've seen that it is possible to buy a house with Bitcoin.
It is possible.
But it's definitely not as simple as it might seem at first glance.
No, it's not a walk in the park. That's
No.
for sure.
So the big takeaway here is knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
The more we understand about the technology, the risks, and yes, the potential, the better decisions we can make about our financial futures. And that's what the deep dive is all about, giving you the information you need to explore these fascinating topics and form your own informed opinions. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into a world of possibilities.
Yeah, it's like we stepped into the future and then took a step back.
Right.
We saw all those headlines about Bitcoin mansions, but then there's the real world stuff, taxes and market swings
Yeah, for sure.
that most people would have to consider.
Exactly.
So for those listeners who are now like, whoa, hold on, I need to learn more about those taxes.
Remember the IRS website we mentioned?
Oh, yeah, that's a great resource.
The good one.
Tons of info there, especially if you're even thinking about, dipping your toes into crypto.
Right.
Not just for real estate.
Yeah.
They break it all down how the IRS sees these transactions,
Yeah.
which can be really different from how we normally think about buying and selling.
Well, I feel like we've done it.
I think so, too.
We explored the exciting and a little scary world of Bitcoin real estate.
It is a wild ride.
It is. We saw that it is possible to buy a house with Bitcoin.
It is.
But it's definitely not as easy as it might seem.
Definitely not.
I think the key takeaway here is knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
The more we understand about the technology, the risks, and, the potential, the better we can plan for our financial futures.
Couldn't agree more.
And that's what we try to do here on the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Give you the info you need to explore these interesting topics and make your own informed decisions. So thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time for another deep dive into something new.
Sounds good.